Hey friends, it's been a while since I posted a how-to video on this channel. So I've been wanting to do this all semester long. I taught a drawing class where the students were required to take a full sheet of 22-inch by 30-inch paper and tear it down into 8 sections to make 8 small drawings measuring 7.5 by 11.25 inches. For their second assignment, the same size sheet of paper, 22 inches by 30 inches down into 11 by 15, 4 sheets, and do 4 drawings, twice the size of those 7.5 by 11 and a quarter drawings. And then the next assignment, as you can guess, would be to take that same size sheet of paper, 22 by 30, tear it in half, and make 2 15 by 22 drawings, leading to the fourth assignment, which was to simply do a drawing on a full sheet of paper, 22 inches by 30 inches. So that first project, I had them build a little PhaseBox where they could keep their 8 small drawings protected as they were making them, and then also to have a portfolio to collect those drawings in. These are just blank sheets of paper. There's 8 of them here. And I really liked that part of the project, partly because I like making things like this, but also because it taught the students to take good care of the paper that they were drawing on as an actual aesthetic object. A lot of times students like to beat up that paper. Some tools you'll need include a steel ruler, a mechanical pencil, utility knife, a bone folder, a quarter, scissors, a glue brush, pin vise with micro drill bits, and a sewing needle. Some of the materials that you're going to need include PVA glue, good bookbinding thread, linen hinging tape, and a hardwood twig. We're going to start with 2 sheets of cover weight 22 by 30 paper. This is Stonehenge paper, but you could use any sort of paper. It measures 22.5 inches by 30 inches. We're also going to use French's paper, any sort of cardstock or cover weight paper that they have. It measures 19 by 25 inches. You can tear your cover weight paper down in one of 2 ways. Here I'm going to be using a bone folder. This is the cheaper but kind of more skilled way to do this. Join the corners and the short edge together. Take your bone folder and slide it over to the middle and run the crease with the belly of your bone folder up and down the paper. Then separate the paper by flicking the bone folder out. Do not push the bone folder along the tear line. I have several videos on my channel about how to tear paper, and you can refer to those as we go along here by clicking on this link. The idea here is to tear the paper down into half sheets and then tear each half sheet into quarter sheets and each quarter sheet into 1/8 sheets that measure 7.5 by 11.25 inches. Make sure that you keep the paper facing the right way and that you also keep the decals facing in a consistent manner. When you jog the paper, there should be one consistent stack. An alternative method, if you have a large clean table and a good steel tear bar, is to use a tear bar to tear the paper. Join the corners, slide your finger over, and pinch the halfway mark on the long edge. These 2 folds act as marks halfway across the page where you can line up your tear bar and tear the paper. Tear the paper over the tear bar and make sure you keep good weight on your left hand or your hand that you're using to hold down the tear bar. Once again, tear these sheets first into half and then each half into quarters and each quarter into 1/8, making sure that you line up the decals and that you face the paper all the same way in your stack. I have 16 sheets of paper that I can now use to measure for making my PhaseBox. You could use more or fewer if you wanted to. The thing that makes this project the perfect no-waste project is that the length of the Stonehenge at 11.25 and the width at 7.5 fit comfortably within the 19 inches of the French paper. Mark on the short edge at 7 5/8 of an inch on both sides. and then cut along that line to separate the narrow strip from the wide strip. Arrange the narrow strip across the wide strip so that you have 8 3/4 of an inch of the wide strip sticking out beyond each edge of the narrow strip. Align the ruler on the edge of the narrow strip and score a line on the wide strip at this point. Do the same score on the other edge of the narrow strip, making sure that there is a gap to accommodate the width of your bone folder. Position your wide strip over your narrow strip. Line up the score lines along the edge of the narrow strip and measure 6.75 inches and score in the same manner. The stack of paper, 16 sheets, measures about a 1/2 inch. You want to give it some room to breathe. So you're going to mark a 1/2 inch away outside of each score line on the narrow strip as well as on the wide strip, and you're going to score these lines as well. Always double check to make sure you're measuring outside of the score line, not inside of the score line. The score lines should make it easy to fold along those score lines, so gently fold the flap over and gently crease it with your thumb. Both score lines need to be folded. Repeat this procedure for the other flap. Do the same thing for the narrow strip of paper. The only real waste that we have in this project is 1 inch strip off of each end of the wide strip of paper. Removing this strip allows us to be able to fold these flaps in with just a little bit of play. The quarter gives a good arc to trace at each corner of the wide and narrow strip, after which you cut these corners with scissors just to give it a good clean look. Cut each corner off, all 4 corners on the wide strip and all 4 corners on the narrow strip. True story, I almost failed kindergarten because I refused to learn how to use scissors. The only reason they passed me is because I have a twin brother and they didn't want to separate us. Take the narrow strip and fold it on the outside score lines and flip it over in preparation for applying glue. PVA glue is an effective glue for this application, but it dries fast, so you have to work quickly. You also have to be careful not to get glue where it's not supposed to go. I always anchor down the piece with my left hand as I brush glue on with my right hand. I also use a scrap piece of newsprint to catch glue that comes over the edge of the surface that I am applying glue to. Gently lift the strip of paper and remove the newsprint. Position the wide strip underneath the narrow strip. Line up the inside corner of score lines on each respective strip and gently align the inside strip over the outside strip and press it down. Once you have pressed this down, you will not be able to lift it back up again. Use the bone folder to apply some more firm, clean pressure to bond the two surfaces. Place something heavy over the bond to cure it while it dries. While the glue is drying, you can clean your brush out. You do not want to let the glue dry in your brush. It will ruin the brush. Clean it out with clean water. Make sure you squeegee between your thumb and forefinger to get all the glue out. You can also cut a 1-inch length from your twig in preparation for making the clasp. This is actually optional. You could use a button if you wanted to do that instead. I like to sand off the edges of my closure just to make sure that they don't catch. This is just a piece of scrap sandpaper. I'm using a pin vise with a micro drill bit, the largest micro drill bit, to drill a pilot hole through one end, about a 1/4 inch away from the end of the closure or clasp. And then I drill another hole equidistant from the other end and about a 1/4 inch away from the original hole along the same axis. Since the pilot holes aren't big enough to pass the needle through, I ream them out with a 1/16 inch drill bit. Should be able to pass a needle through the holes without any problem. I use self-adhesive linen hinging tape to reinforce the sewing holes. I need one larger strip and one small square. Mark the halfway point on the inside of the fold and cover that with the small square of linen hinging tape. Align the clasp and poke holes through each of the sewing stations onto the linen hinging tape. Then poke the holes through using the same needle. The holes should align with the clasp on the outside. Thread a needle with about 18 inches of thread. Pass the needle through the inside edge first and through the corresponding station on the clasp. Then pass the needle through the other direction on the other hole and back into the box. You got to make sure that you don't pull the tail from the inside all the way out as you pull this needle back into the box. Wind a scrap piece of thread in the gap between the clasp and the box. Tie a square knot inside the box, right over left, left over right. Clip off the thread about a 1/4 inch away from the knot. Measure halfway across the opposite flap on the inside and make a mark. And then make another mark at the same measurement about a ruler's width away. Place the larger strip of linen hinging tape centered over these 2 marks. With the needle, poke a hole through both of these marks from the inside going out. Thread the needle with about 18 inches of thread. Pass the needle from the inside going out and over the outside of the flap on one station, and then back into from the outside going in on the other station. Pull so that there's about 2 to 3 inches of the tail left over, and tie another square knot on the inside of the flap. Pass the needle back through same direction on the first station without piercing the thread. Clip off the tail about a 1/4 inch away from the knot. And that's it. You've finished your box. Jog your stack of paper, fit it into the inside of the box. Close the flaps of the narrow strip first, before closing the flaps of the wide strip second, making sure that the last flap to close is the one with a thread attached to it. This thread is used to wind in the gap between the clasp and the box to keep the box closed. You can snip off the excess after you've wound the thread around 3 or 4 times. Thanks for watching. Happy making.